Better than that, I get to ask questions of experts on creativity. And those are, from my left, Anna Angelic, digital strategist from Droga5, Elisa Bowen, general manager, Wall Street Journal Digital, Paul DiBraccio, CEO of InterEvco, Niklas Lindström, SVP, head of interactive production at BBDO, and finally, Jim Meskaukis, co-founder of Media Darwin. Thanks everybody for joining us on the panel today. But before I have a question to address to you all, I have a question for the audience. By a show of hands, who here is happy with the advertising experience they have when they're sitting at their desktop? Anybody? Thrilled, thrilled. Okay. I'd say that is a percentage equal to the average click-through rate today. And so for sure, we have an awful lot to talk about. But my first question for the panel is this: why are we having this conversation? We see that consumers aren't happy, and brand advertisers are keeping dollars in TV and other analog media because digital is poor at capturing the hearts and minds of consumers. So why are we having a debate over whether we need to improve the creative experience we offer in display? That would be symptomatic of an industry that is tone deaf or just plain stupid, and I don't think they're just plain stupid. I don't know, Anna, why are we having this conversation about the value of creative units in display?
Well, first I have to disagree with you because this is not a good way to start the panel. But I do think that there is a lot of creativity online and there's a lot of brand creativity online. The fact if it's not in display advertising doesn't mean that branding online, digital branding doesn't exist. And you have to broaden up a little bit and see maybe the web is not the right medium in terms of like creativity in display, because like Facebook, like Coca-Cola has 8 billion fans on Facebook, for example. And Twitter is also a great branding tool when brands can use it as a service. And then you also have like independent content publishers like BuzzFeed, or Icon has Cheeseburger Network, where brands are doing very innovative content stuff. So I think it's like the creativity and display advertising are overlapping circles, but they're not 100% overlapping.
And so you've jumped right to a really interesting area that there is fantastic creativity online. It just hasn't found its way into paid media. Elisa, why do you think this is?
I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there to produce brilliant creative in large units, the IAB Rising Stars, the OPA large units. I think that it's a cost, and it requires a really different kind of way of working between the creative side of the house and the media planning side of the house that hasn't been organized for the kind of optimal creative output that we would all expect and that consumers want and that's good for brands. So I think that the way a lot of clients or agencies are planning and buying traditional banners and box unit, standard units has been an exercise in efficiency rather than an exercise in impact. And that comes from where the whole digital plan originates. And I think that people need to be, brands need to be, marketers need to be, and agencies need to be far more demanding of their digital spend and of their online creative, frankly.
So I have a slightly, I think, contentious position on this. I think that there's a conspiracy in place, and Jim and Paul, this is coming to you, this question. I think there's a three-way conspiracy between the programmatic buying ecosystem, which Joanna so eloquently displayed earlier, and advertising agencies to make online advertising an automated, performance-driven one. Why is this? Well, number one, for media agencies, the easiest way to deal with the enormously complex new reality is to turn digital inventory into commodities and trade the units like pork bellies. For creative agencies, and thanks for setting this up, Anna, painting the online ad market as programmatic and direct marketing focused allows the agencies to put their efforts into owned and shared experiences, which are far more creative and profitable. So, Jim, is this a conspiracy? And if so, how long can you all keep it up?
I would say, first of all, I don't think it's a conspiracy, because a conspiracy would require an awful lot of coordinated intelligence industry that lacks a whole great deal of that. I don't think that we are proactive and pre-planning enough to commit to a conspiracy. I think that the space spends most of its time reacting, and I think that that prevents it from then being able to address itself in a way that would permit time for twirling mustaches and back smoky rooms to try to figure out how we could prevent things from getting creative. The real challenge is one of friction, as far as the creative enterprise requires some work, and media sides of the business certainly doesn't know how to think about that. Also, the challenge of scale has been, in no small part, a contributing factor to that. Media shops, and particularly those that are part of large holding companies, which themselves are primarily accounting firms, see money in the transaction, not in the work that's being done. And the more transactions I commit, the greater revenue that I can yield in an environment that's got so much downward cost pressure on the profitability of that revenue that I'm scrambling to make things happen. I mean, that's why you have holding companies trying to develop their own trading desks, because they're under the false presumption that they would be able to keep all that margin that is the difference between the cost of the inventory and what they end up selling it to as a client. Add to that the fact that they can account for that as gross revenue to their bottom line because they take a principal risk in that inventory, which allows them to account for it differently to the street. I mean, there's a whole lot of economic forces that's making that stuff happen. And when clients finally decide to ask for that money back, they're all in for a big surprise. But that's what's preventing it from happening. It's more of a Chomsky-esque system trying to preserve itself than it is coordinated intelligence, because there just isn't that much intelligence.
I'm so disappointed in that answer, because if it were a conspiracy, then we could break the conspiracy and move forward. It's much more complicated than that.
Sadly, yes.
Niklas, you sit really at the a bottleneck, a pressure point. You're the head of integrated production at arguably the country's most creative advertising agency. And you've got, on one side, technology folks and this crazy complex ecosystem, again, which Joanna spoke about. And then on the other side, you've got creative people who want to tell stories. If you read the trade press today, you would be really, let's say, confused. There's this enormous paradox out there. There's, on the one hand, talk of an enormous creative revolution in display happening. Look over the past 2 years, we've seen the luminaries of our industry become display advertising experts. From Steve Jobs at Apple, who moved into the display business with iAds, Sergey and Larry, Google Display, and even Mark Zuckerberg, everyone's hero today, is fundamentally in the display business. And yet, when you see what's happening and what's capable, we're certainly not seeing what I would suggest is a creative revolution. What's the truth? Is there a creative revolution happening or not?
Creative revolution, no, I don't think so. I think there's a creative evolution happening, and I think there's a lot of different factors that weigh in why the landscape is looking the way it does right now. I think the formats and the standards needs to come a lot further than they've been. We've been abusing consumers a long time with really crappy internet advertising. So, I mean, in order to change the kind of engagement level on the internet for advertising, we need to be much better. And I think one of the things also, as we as a creative agency, we also need to break down the walls between us and media agencies and other companies also. We need to have a lot more dialogue with our clients and our clients' different partners to really sit at a table and basically agree on what the roadmap is for creating really successful internet advertising. And I don't think that's really happening today because of a lot of different reasons. But I think we can be a lot better at being more open between each other.
And Anna, where are you putting your personal R&D in terms of online branding, that of Droga 5, and how do you see the industry applying this creative brilliance that has built unbelievable brands and businesses in the analog world? Where is it hiding today?
Well, I can speak for myself, not for my company. But yeah, like what Niklas said is, I mean, like, I think that's a good point, that we're moving forward and we are at the beginning, but at the same time, I think there is one crucial question is, like, is web advertising medium? It didn't start like that. TV started as advertising medium, print started as advertising medium, radio did, but web didn't. Web is like connecting people with information and each other. So why would you, I mean, that was, I think, the struggle, and why we are here today is because maybe it just doesn't fit. Like, no matter what you try, it won't fit. Maybe you need to explore, like, different advertising formats, like branding formats. As I said, like how you build brand platforms. Do you invest in content strategy? Do you invest in services? Do you invest in like cross-selling in different ways? But maybe banners are not a solution, because they're like 15 years ago, they were directly repurposed from print. And now, yes, we have better targeting, so you know exactly who you want to reach, and there is better marriage between content and ads, but ultimately that's a print format, and that's why they work better on tablets, as you said before. But I think like that we should use our technology and creative and strategic resources on finding ways how to develop formats that are more aligned with the flow of people's behavior online, rather than interrupting it. And that's always going to be a problem.
So, thanks, Anna, very eloquently put. And if I had something clever to disprove you, I would say it now. But I'm going to put a long pause in here. But Elisa, is the web fundamentally not an advertising medium, as Anna contends? And will we, on the web, desktop, ultimately move on to different formats to try to sell advertising?
No, I don't think so. I think that Anna's point is valid in that a lot of what's been tried on the web is pretty pathetic and pretty sad and unengaging. But in all mediums, all places that people are spending their time reading, in our case, news content or analysis, or watching videos, or really engaging with media, there are great opportunities for brands to be associated with that experience and to carry their message. iPads, for example, I think Anna called out as a potential exception to her theory. iPads are being called the great e-commerce device because the amount of actual transactions that happen from seeing a beautiful creative through to actually buying something online is tremendous on a device like that. Video is just beginning to come into its own as a branding and as a marketing vehicle online and through digital platforms. And so I think it's a little too soon to call the show over and to call the party unsuccessful. I think it's really beginning, but I do think that the brands that are having the most impact online are the ones that are thinking, as Anna said, expansively about how all these things fit together. What content do they want to own? What capabilities do they need to be publishers in their own right? And how do they engage through beautiful or interesting or effective creative, which doesn't necessarily just mean a banner, it could mean a whole host of things, including a banner. How do they engage online with the right kind of message that's suitable for what they're trying to achieve, and work with quality publishers and branded environments and achieve really long-lasting results? But to think that this is just the cheap option, you can't afford to do television, so let's just do some online, I think that's where a lot of campaigns and a lot of marketers fall down. If you really want to do digital well, just like everything else, you have to invest, and you have to invest over a long time, and you have to make it a really meaningful part of a strategically thought out plan. It doesn't just sort of happen instantly. And there are, in all sorts of mediums, plenty of unsuccessful examples where people have tried to cut corners or tried to get some cheap marketing, and that doesn't necessarily work any better in print or television than it does in digital. So I think there is a huge potential for brands and for marketers in digital, but it's not cheap and it's not easy. It requires investment.
Paul, I'm not going to let you off. I'm going to save the hard question for you. And I'm going to pick on Joanna for a minute from Forrester, who in her last slide said, data will rule. My personal opinion is that it could not be more wrong, and that what we are seeing in media buying is a great leveling. Today, any media agency has access to the same inventory, the same data, the same technology, and so this means that media agencies will become commoditized, and the differentiation, therefore, is not in data. In fact, it's going to be a commodity, and so. And so that you may have to hand this one off. And so I believe that the differentiation, therefore, is going to come from the place where it's always come from, which is ideas. Are we anywhere near close to having this great leveling in the media landscape?
No.
Thanks for that, Paul. And
I think Joanna brought up some good points, is that I think we're at a crossroads. We've kind of positioned ourselves over the last 10 or 15 years into a ghetto of direct response. So inevitably, we've gotten to this point where data is ruling a great part, and with good results. But at that point, the branding is taking a backseat to it. And very rarely do you see effective branding campaigns online, other than in maybe a Yahoo, Google, and whatever, a few here and there, because of the reach inherent in that. And everything else gets relegated to the back of the book. In magazine advertising, in the front of the book were all those great, fold-outs and 4-color ads. And then in the back of the book was the direct response, the little ads, X-ray glasses, and so on and so forth. I think we're going to split. And I think there's going to be, I call it the direct response ghetto, because I'm a publisher's representative and we're always fighting those numbers. And then I think there's going to be branding, but it's going to be, I think it's a long way to go, because of, I think Jim brought it up about the efficiencies that agencies have to deal with in the margins. And I think we had a conversation offline about the advertisers find out that the agencies are buying on a DSP and they want even lower rates, and so on and so forth. So I think we're at a crossroads. I'm not sure that it's going to be either or.
So I think, I completely agree with you, by the way, that we are heading to a place where we have a distinct programmatic buying driven direct marketing marketplace, where optimized offers are delivered to an optimized audience. And that's what we heard a lot about this morning. But we're not seeing the emergence of the other half of that, which is a brand building practice where we have different creative units, different measurements, such as engagement and interaction rates, and fundamentally different conversations with clients.
The one place where I see that beginning to emerge is in the place of online video, where we have a lot of really exciting conversations with agencies about how they're taking their clients' video strategy from just TV to TV plus a whole range of social initiatives and online initiatives and viral initiatives, and that's one area where perhaps we will start to see a little renaissance of creativity. I don't think it's a bad thing that direct response advertising is strong and robust and increasing and growing. Direct marketing has always been a part of the mix, and it should be in digital too. But perhaps in the areas of video, we might start to see better experimentation or adventurism.
Yeah, but that's just repurposing of TV format, isn't it?
It's not. It's not. I do think there are a lot of brands that are doing more than just repurposing TV. It started with that.
For example, give me an example.
Some of the automotive clients that are commissioning web-only programming from their fan base or from their user base, or even producing mini shows. Some of the fashion labels and lifestyle labels that are doing that.
So they have like a very high production cost of those videos, and then they have to pay for a media buy to drive traffic to those videos. Does it make sense?
I don't know the ins and outs of their plans, but I think it makes sense for them to be doing that, absolutely. I think if you're going to produce content, as any publisher will tell you, you spend a lot of money producing content, and then you want to make sure that a lot of people look at it.
So the question is, why would you produce so much content? Wouldn't it be smarter to seed content in a different way and to partner with publishers as a brand to produce content that people are already using, instead of putting so much money in production, which is expensive. It's not as expensive as traditional media, but digital production is expensive. And then you have an elaborate media plan that includes paid media at the end to drive that traffic. I just don't think that model is sustainable.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Now, I have a client that does a lot of video online, and that's what they want to do, and so that's great, and I'm not there to help them not do what they're asking to do. As their agent, I can advise them. But most of what constitutes online video is just trading a fairly decent television experience for a really crappy online one. And I'm not sure that anybody likes that. I mean, first of all, we're all operating under the delusion that people want advertising. So once you get it into your heads that the best that you can hope for is a relationship of managed hostility with advertising, the better you'll be, because then what you'll do is instead focus on things like things that are more appealing. And it's not going to be necessarily appealing for the sake of getting somebody to click on a banner, because I think that's a ridiculous enterprise unless you're selling pet rocks or Ginsu knives or rotisserie things or Ron Popeil stuff for the world, which is a big piece of the market and should have its place. But most successful brand advertising, where the bulk of the dollars are, is an advertising that is a rhetorical enterprise of persuasion, not one to go ahead and cudgel you over the head and get you to click on a banner. Most of the people who click on banners, data shows it time and time again, unless you're interested in 60+ women who are looking for free stuff, clicks aren't very important. It's better to be associated with good content than it is to either be just decoupled for content and have an algorithm tell you where your ad should be based on the number of clicks it's counted up and other kinds of mysterious behavior that it's watching, than to abandon all of that because it's become crappy, because you're not paying enough for the advertising, and so you have to create your own content space. You've ended up translating costs from here in your media to costs in producing your own content in order to try to become a destination, which most people don't really care about anyway. I mean, the truth of the matter is no one's looking for a deeper relationship with their mayonnaise or their toilet paper. They need to, they need to be persuaded that it's better than the other guys, but they don't need to put a lot of thought into it. They need to be tapped into their limbic system and get them to kind of react like a bug to go ahead and make things happen. It's not a rational enterprise or any of those kinds of things. So this focus on, like, we're having the same conversation for 15 years. I've been buying online since 1995, and it's always, if only we could make the banner better. I think that Anna has said the most interesting, has posed the most interesting intellectual challenge to everybody in this room and in this business, which is maybe the medium isn't appropriate for the kinds of advertising we've been trying to foist upon it. I mean, what is the definition of an insanity? It's trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So far, that's all we've done. We've improved the mousetrap a little bit with all this data and machines and that sort of thing, but we haven't accounted for the dearth of mice or the quality of the bait. And that's, I mean, we're having the wrong conversation. I mean, it's almost so glaringly obvious that it's stunning we haven't raised it before. I mean, I think that the approach has to be kind of just started from scratch. I think you said something about flow experience. Was that right? Okay, so
Yeah,
there's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is a great brain of our time, who'd written about flow experience. The whole idea of trying to become part of what we do every day, rather than becoming an interruptive force. Some interruption is necessary in order to get your point across, but by and large, becoming that I think is what the web probably lends itself to better than any other thing. And that's a conversation that he started 15 years ago at the Isometrics Lab and at Vanderbilt School of Management. They were doing these sorts of tests, and we completely abandoned that conversation. I think that's the best one to get back to. I mean, as you can tell, I'm kind of excited by this concept, and
so
you guys should really be checking that out. She just brought up.
And so Jim, I don't think anyone would disagree with that concept that the best place to be to be relevant is in a viewer's flow. The truth is that this is an $11 billion industry of putting ad spaces in the path of viewers' flow. Up until a year ago, those ad spaces were always defined by two dimensions, and their primary functionality was click to leave a page. In fact, even today, well over 90% of ads don't have engaging functions, are not rich media. The industry, started by the OPA, I guess 2 years ago, developed larger, more interactive and highly functional units. The IAB followed with Rising Stars. And so at the end of this year, the standard advertising package that almost every publisher follows will have two types of units. One, old-fashioned two-dimensional banners, and an equal number of larger interactive units which will be supported at scale. Niklas, is that enough to propel this creative revolution? Or generally after that, to the rest of the panel, what else do we need?
I think it's a way, definitely. I mean, the most interesting thing, though, about the new kind of interactive ad formats is that since we've abused the consumer for such a long time, they're really scared of engaging with ads. So I think we have like an educational challenge also. It's not only a creative challenge. I think we need to almost like prove to the consumer that it's safe to engage with these interactive ad formats also, and how do you do that? Maybe you don't need, AdKeeper is great as a format with a K, maybe we need an ad-safe format, you know? I mean, we have an educational challenge to basically get the trust back from the consumers.
It was 14 years of education. And also I think that won't happen until you change metrics, which is a click, and then you change a view of banners, which is direct media, so direct marketing. So I mean, like both of those premises are still there, interactive banners or not.
So even if we remove the barrier of creative canvases, we have other barriers, and Anna, I tend to agree. I think measurement is an enormous barrier. I think measurement is bad for our industry, and I would like to ban all forms of measurement in the online space, because what we are good at measuring is bottom of the funnel, last click metrics, which turn this business into a tradable commodity business. What everyone on this stage is great at doing, which is creating new desire and demand, whether you're a media specialist, a creative specialist, or a premium publisher, is not measured well today, is not well compensated for today. And so I'd rather have no metrics than the ones we currently have. Elisa, how would your clients react to that if you just said, we're not going to report any more click-through rates because it diminishes what we do as a premium publisher and what your agency does as a premium creative force.
I think everyone would agree privately and have a complete uproar and anxiety attacks publicly. I mean, I think that's one of the ironies, that we all understand that click is not the right way to measure things, and yet we all continue to default to that because it's a common parlance that everybody understands and there is some relativity to it. So I'm interested to see how the IAB succeed with the Making Measurement Matter initiative, which I think is admirable, and I think people are encouraged that we're at least having those conversations, but I think privately everyone's scratching their heads about how we'll actually implement that because it's hard and it's time consuming, and to your point, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, right? So I think, we have to try to figure out, again, back to Anna's point, when you talk with CMOs at that level, they don't talk about clicks. They're talking about inspiring and creating new demand and creating new associations and really helping drive the business in large, long-term, fundamental ways. But something happens between the translation of that vision and the actual execution that I think we all feel and battle every single day. And that's, I guess, where we need to continue to keep fighting the fight. But it's a tricky one.
So to continue on the vein of throwing mud in the face of convention, I think that innovation, technological innovation in the ad product space should stop now. We should put all of the rocket science PhDs from Stanford back in NASA so we can go to Mars. And we should focus on doing things well in the, with the ecosystem that we have now. Niklas, I hear time and time and time again that organizations like yours have to spend a disproportionate amount of their campaign resources on designing to technology and spec with very little left over or not enough left over to design for ideas, and ideas are what clients are looking for. I don't know, are you pro-innovation or
as a representative for a creative agency, I would be fired if I wasn't pro-innovation. Yes, I do think it's really important. I do believe that it's really interesting looking at the whole kind of spending from the client side. I think there's a lot of money that are being spent on autopilot, and it's kind of interesting because I think the discussion almost needs to be had earlier in the process of what we spend on media and what we spend on other initiatives as well. But it's also, I mean, like what we decide to spend in media also needs to be discussed at an earlier stage. I think I do believe that we are, as a creative agency, being just served sometimes, specs, and without getting a chance to be creative and be come with recommendations that might be better for our clients.
And so I have a major pet peeve, and I don't know if you guys see it. We've got some of the perpetrators up here. I go out, I have the luck of going out to seeing a lot of publishers and a lot of technology companies, and I visit their ad product people who are quite creative and innovative. And then I go to agencies and I see ad content developers, people who do things within those spaces. And they share the same DNA, and if they were in a room together, I think you'd see real brilliance. The problem is that it goes from ad product creator at a publisher to salespeople, to media buyers, to the creative folks, and the value that is lost in that chain is phenomenal. I don't know, Elisa, have you found a way to short circuit that?
We have found lots of successful examples of being able to short circuit that, where we have an opportunity to actually just sit with clients actually and talk about what we might like to do. And it goes back to that disconnect between what our customers, in this case the buying community, say they want and what they actually do. And I think when we get an opportunity to actually talk about what they say they want and dream big and think big and create new things, we end up creating breakthrough opportunities that leave everybody happier. Now, there is a growing discussion, I would say, amongst publishers about the amount of time and energy that we as publishers invest in producing creative or solutions that arguably should be being done by the client, the client's agency, and that's not necessarily always a really happy kind of threesome where you have a publisher in the mix with an agency who think that you're trying to do their job and a client who just wants a good solution at the end of the day. So I would say, yes, we've found ways to break through it, and unfortunately also would say that happens when we work directly with a client more often than it happens when we're working directly with their agency.
So this is one of the most interesting phenomenons that I've seen over the past year, is the emergence of agency-like groups within publishers. Condé Nast has 60 people. Viacom, MTV has an agency. Meredith has even come out and said they have an agency. Microsoft Advertising has an incredibly good creative group inside. And the truth is that many of the programs that come out of these internal publisher organizations are better than those from third-party creative agencies, because the publisher agency knows the content incredibly well, has a seamless understanding and relationship with the platform, and with the platform from a technological perspective, and of course understands the agency. So is that the future? Media agency to internal publisher agency, and poor Niklas and Anna will be doing social campaigns until they sell to
Quite
Google.
happy.
That's, I don't know, Jim. Are you seeing this? Are you? You're a media guy. Are you bypassing creative agencies and going right to publisher internal content generation groups?
We are working with creative agencies on a regular basis, and the primary reason for that is because, and it all depends on the relationship that that agency has with the client, but if they have been handed kind of the keys to the brand stewardship kingdom, then they really are better positioned to do a lot of that sort of work. And it's incumbent upon both them and the publishers to overcome the kind of friction that we're talking about in getting that job done. It's not always easy. All the creative folks bitch and moan about it all the time. The publisher folks are dealing with my campaign plus 100 others, and everyone is scrambling to try to make it work. But at the end of the day, they end up making it work. Honestly, and there's a whole host of reasons why this doesn't happen, but if it could happen, I'll tell you my blue sky fantasy scenario. If planning cycles were longer, if everyone was given a little bit more time to try to get the job done, there wouldn't be a lot of these problems, because while mistakes might come up, they wouldn't interfere with the marketing calendar. And part of the problem is that the next thing you know, the marketing calendar's got pushed off a week. Oh, now it's 2 weeks. Oh, now it's 3 weeks. And now it's 4 weeks. Because all of the back and forth that needs to happen. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am the worst translator of creative needs from one side of the house to the creative satisfaction of those needs on the other side of the house. And so the faster I can get the publishers and the creative shop working together, actually that solves a lot of the problems. It's not necessary to necessarily have the client involved. One of the reasons why the media companies want to go to the client and get that done, and more of the media companies are developing, as you've said, those kinds of agencies, it's that whole Nicholas Negroponte Venn diagram where they're all starting to overlap, is because the relationship at agencies are so short. An agency might only work for a client for 18 months, and whereas the brand marketer might last for 10 years, and so the publisher would rather have that relationship.
That's only a kind of outcome, I guess, of the core issue, though, that I think we feel as publishers, which is that that we are able to have the kind of conversations that we've been talking about here today more readily and more openly and more adventurously, I guess, with with the brand stewards themselves, with the marketing groups within the brands that we work for, as opposed to the agencies where on a day-to-day basis, not in general, and certainly it's not anyone's intention, but on a day-to-day basis, the conversations degenerate ultimately to an Excel spreadsheet and a click-through rate. And when we have the opportunity to engage with brands at a more strategic, more visionary level, we get to have the kind of conversations that we happen to think are good for us and happen to think are good for our clients as well.
Can I jump in here? I think we can all live together. I've always believed, I come from magazine publishing, where we've always had in-house agencies, and we call them promotion departments or marketing departments. And I think in the blue sky ideal world, it would be great to reach the marketing departments as a publisher and also bring in the agency. Being a media salesperson for years, I've kind of learned the Bible is don't burn the agency because they're going to catch up to you sooner or later. And this is one of those situations where I think 1 + 1 could equal 3. So I think they can coexist. And in television, magazines, radio, they've been coexisting for years. I think this is just an example of traditional ad agencies playing catch up and calling themselves digital agency departments now just to play catch up. And same thing with the magazine publishers. I know Condé Nast for a fact, for years, Cy Newhouse denied the value of digital, and then they were all playing catch up. So I think they can coexist, and they have been in other media.
And I mean, like, I had to jump in there, like, a couple of points. If you focus too much on just optimizing your product in terms of ads, you're really, like, worrying only about people who end up at your website. You're not worrying about how to bring people there. And I think that's very risky regarding how vast the web is. And also, we shouldn't define like media strategy too narrowly to paid media, because owned and earned are really, really big part of that. So decisions need to be made strategically. Like how do you manage other communities before they come to your site, at your site once they're there? How do you acquire new customers at the end of the day if you focus all your resources just on the publishing side? That's one thing. And second thing is that agencies often struggle that they want to offer something like more creative in terms of brand strategy, but the media buying agencies on the client side, that they insist on specific formats. So it's like this, for me, that this blame game just makes everyone feel comfortable where they are and not make them change, I think.
So it is a conspiracy. Yes, thank you. Jim, you're wrong. Anna, you're right. Steve, how are we doing on time?
We need to go to questions.
Well, let's... any questions?
If there aren't.
The brave man in the back.
Hi, I'm Nader from Omega Mobile. So if there's a conspiracy to, let's say, not change and keep everything focused on metrics and stay away from creativity and the consumer experience, what are the best, I guess, tactics that are going to disrupt this conspiracy?
Well, as the originator of the IAB's new brand-friendly creative ad formats, the Rising Stars, I would suggest that that's a fantastic place to start. At present, we have over 90% of the impressions in the ecosystem traded as 728 by 90 or 300 by 250, and we have 7 or 8% custom units. And what these units, in addition to the OPA, which are fantastic units as well, are attempting to do are open up a middle class of brand-friendly spaces that agencies can do the things that we have spoken about here within. Okay. Thank you very much. I want to thank the panel. You guys have been fantastic. We could go on for a couple of hours, but Steve was pacing nervously and eyeing me. And thanks to everybody.